really good Iowa team. They got us pretty good here last year. And played really well here. They're really another elite offense, really talented. They run great motion, and they've got some gifted players. Fran does a great job. They mix defenses. The metrics would certainly show they're one of the top half teams in the Big Ten right now. Their metrics are really impressive, both their net and their Ken Palm. And I think when I watch them on film, I think that's what I see. So, a terrific team, great challenge for us here tomorrow night at 8:00. So. Good to be back home. Hopefully people can get here safely. Obviously, I know there's some concerns about weather. Hopefully people who are planning on coming take a little extra time, and if they feel like it's safe enough and can get here and enjoy a little beverage and hot dog or whatever it is you choose. I'm glad that's opening back up for our fans. So be good to be back home, but we've got a great challenge ahead of us with this Iowa team.
So the way they change defenses and the way that they will pressure you in different ways. You guys have taken care of the ball better in the last several games than you had in a while. Are you I guess what's your comfort level or confidence level that will translate into a challenge like this? Yeah, it's interesting you ask that, because they are number one in the league in turnover percentage. They turn you over more than anybody else in the league. So, I don't know that it's necessarily fair for us to expect a 6 turnover game like we had last game, but I do think, can we keep that thing, 10 or less, and I think that's going to be critical against them, because they do. I think it's the confusion sometimes with the switching defenses, and they do a good job kind of camouflaging whether they're in man or zone, and they've obviously got great length. Is that a case where, because you have a Jamari, the youth in your backcourt isn't as young as it was a couple weeks ago, but yeah. Does having a Jamari help you with some of your concerns about that? Yeah, it does, because he's pretty sure-handed with the ball, and he's been good with that for the most part of this year. He's not really had a whole lot of unforced turnovers. I think he definitely helps, and I think it's going to be a good, education for our young guys in terms of learning to play against a different style. Just they're different. They run great motion. They've got great pace, and they mix defenses up.
Did he look like he was coming off several days out, Jamari, last game? There was that specific sequence, the turnover to Kyle, I think it was, and then he fouls on the three-point shot. Yeah. Just uncharacteristic. And there were a couple. Did he just look a little off after so long out?
I think so. He was, he wasn't out. I think anytime you're out for, what was he out? Probably about 5 or 6 days. So I think anytime you're out, but it's tough to say. Could he have had those errors? If he had practiced, maybe. So I don't want to put it on that. That was a bad sequence there. But I thought he also had some really good moments defensively in the game. And
you obviously were pretty excited about getting him. Coach Peden talked, I think, recently about as soon as he went in the transfer portal, you guys were like, that's a guy we should go get. How much has he delivered based on your expectations now that we're pretty well into the season?
Yeah, no, he's been what we thought, and if you can reflect back or remember back on that time, well, why did we get him? Because we at that point still anticipated Dwayne being in the backcourt with him, and we felt like those would be a really good complement. So we've had to kind of maneuver and adjust a little bit with that, but we felt like with kind of the 1, 2, 3 of Jamari, Dwayne, and Justice, he would just complement those other 2 guys. So obviously we've had to kind of adjust on the fly here a little bit, and it's worked out well. Thank goodness some guys have really performed well.
From an intangible standpoint, when you have a guy like Jamari and EJ and Kyle, he said one loss can bleed into another. A game like Purdue can lead into a loss against a team like Iowa coming here. How much have you seen that in practice of guys letting that 24 hours pass and focusing on what's next, especially when you need that at this point in the season, going into a March when you're just getting into February?
Yeah, I think it's, in this league, I think you really have to have, you have to have a short memory. You really do. After wins and loss, you have to really focus on those things you have to get better in, try to really put into practice those areas where you have to get better in. But if you let it, league play can really beat you up, and I think you can also get complacent, if you've won a couple. So I think you have to really guard against both, and stay focused on just the task at hand, the day in front of you, as much as anything.
Have you seen a concerted effort from those guys, the older guys, to make sure that the younger guys don't fall into that kind of trap?
Well, it's tough to say because we haven't right now. I think what you really look for is, if you have stretches where you drop, 3 out of 4, 3 in a row, or, 4 out of 6, then I think that's where you're kind of looking at the temperature of the room and the morale of everybody. So we haven't really had those stretches yet. So I think as much as anything, guys were really disappointed. They fought hard, particularly in the last 15 minutes. We learned, we spent a lot of time on film yesterday, in turning the page to preparing, but also getting better ourselves. This is, as much as anything, about continuing to improve yourself. And yet at the same time, Iowa presents a lot of challenges because they're really good. And their style of play presents challenges. So I think having a feel for those things or having a kind of a growth mindset is really important.
We saw Jamari was, still in a walking boot and whatnot. Does he have any, restrictions or limitations in practice or, games with minutes, or is he pretty much all good to go?
No, he's fine. He was on it. He would have, if he played against Minnesota, he would have had minutes restrictions, but not now.
And then I know you acknowledged that Zed struggled a lot against Purdue, and, a lot of that has to do with matching up with a guy like Zach Edey, of course, and that size. But what would you like to see from him on Thursday to kind of let you know that he, learned from that and has responded?
Just greater effort and physicality, as much as anything. I think effort and physicality. When he's had games where he's played really well, that's been there for him. When he's had games where he struggled, that's been the case. Where he hasn't quite been to the level it needs to be at.
Hey, Chris, I was just I was wondering about Justin, kind of how he was responding to not starting against Purdue, what the stretch has been like for him, and then I guess what the plan is for him over the next few, or for this Thursday.
Oh, I mean, I don't ask guys necessarily how they're doing with, a change in the lineup. I think as much as anything, guys have great approaches and great attitudes. They understand the importance of being ready to play whenever your number's called. Justin's a phenomenal teammate. He's a phenomenal teammate. He is an absolute joy to coach. He always has been. He is everything you'd want, in the kind of person you'd want to coach. Incredible teammate, works really hard, vocal. I think Justin just, he just he wants to win, and obviously he wants to play well and shoot it better. And I think in some ways he's just got to, he's putting probably a little bit too much pressure at times on himself. He's just got to cut loose and play. But no frustrations or complaints on my end. He handled it like you'd expect Justin to handle it, which is like an absolute pro.
And obviously, like, starting lineups for you aren't like the biggest thing. You have guys rotating in and out, playing 20 minutes no matter what. But I'm curious, do you see that combination of Michi and Jamari kind of in kind of the recent future, like, is that going to be kind of the way to go along with Malachi?
I think it's fluid. Yeah, I think it'll always be fluid. We could move different guys in different spots. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be stay. I mean, Kyle could start, other guys could start at different times this year.
Chris, it's hard to believe it. We're at about the midpoint of the Big Ten season. You would be if you got that Nebraska game.
Yeah.
Do you, in general, I guess, how do you feel about where this team is? It feels like this is kind of the time of year where roles really lock in, and you kind of have a pretty good sense of what you have. Do you have a feel for where you are right now?
Yeah, I think as much as any year that I've any of our 4+ years, I think I'm learning more about our team with each time out than I have and that we have as a coaching staff in the 4+ years. And it's probably, Adam, a byproduct of some key guys that we kind of thought we were going to have that we don't, and just new guys, and then guys growing as the season goes on. So I think we've got a really good feel. I feel good about certainly some of our play and stretches of play. I think it's been very, very good. But I think we've got a long ways to go and a lot of improvement that needs to be made. But I'm very much still learning about this group.
What is that like as a coach? Can you maybe shed some light on when you're going into a season, you think you have an idea, like you mentioned Dwayne and Justice, like that impacts the roster building, and then you get into a season and then Justice happens, and then you have COVID, and it's just, what, as a coach, like what sort of things have you had to try to lean on to navigate? Are there books? Are there people you call?
You really lean on your staff. Try to get their perspective because it's very much collaborative in how we work and operate. So, my perspective is at times my perspective, and sometimes it can be influenced by whatever, and I want to be able to hear a diversity of thought. And I think early on when we started to have, as we got closer to the season, some concerns about Justice, that's when we really had to have a lot of staff meetings. Okay, what's our plan here? What are we going to do here? He was such an integral part of how we were planning on playing in November. You go all off season and you're planning on, okay, this is a guy who you're going to build some things around. So we had to really, and I think at that point, one of the things we decided to do is we were going to try to invest early in some of our younger guys and see if that could pay dividends as we move forward.
And with, I know you said with Justice and with Seth, there's probably not an update for a little while. You said that on your radio show. Now that we're into February, do you is there potentially a point where you say, okay, now we need to talk about, do you come back as opposed to can you come back?
Oh, I think that's a reality that, it's not like we're coming in and having that conversation every day, but I'm sure that's something they're thinking about. It's certainly something we're thinking about as the days continue to turn. So, again, it's their primary focus right now is on rehab and returning. But I think certainly that's a we've had that conversation maybe once or twice, but there's not really much because they're still working to return and there's still a lot of season left to be played. But it's certainly I'm sure something they've thought about and we've thought about.
Kind of piggybacking off that with Seth and Justice, are you expecting, obviously they'll be out, but are you expecting everybody else to be available for tomorrow?
Yes. We haven't practiced yet today. Hopefully everybody's fine. But yes.
And yes. You guys got to play two fantastic bigs this weekend in Zach and Travion. Now you got another challenge with Keegan. Obviously made a huge play to tie that game up on, I think it was Monday night.
Yeah, play.
How do you attack him? What are you seeing from him on film so far?
He's so good. He is... He's really an elite talent. It's fun to watch in our league. In some ways, I say it's fun at times. It's not fun when you're competing against him. But our league has some tremendous NBA talent this year, and that's exciting for the Big Ten, I think, to have that. And he's certainly one of those guys. And you saw it last year. You saw glimpses of it last year where you were saying, whew. he's going to be really, really good, and probably not going to be there too long. He's just that gifted, and his brother's really gifted too.
Just one more thing about the super seniors this year and all the guys that had the opportunity to come back. How have you seen that impact the sport? I asked Fran McCaffrey about it today. He said every team we play is old.
Yeah.
You start filling out the scouting report, everybody's got 5th year, 6th year guys. But
yeah.
How have you seen that impact the sport, maybe the quality of play?
I think it's better across the board. I think it's a little bit better across the board. I think you also see mid-majors are better than they've ever been because they're a little bit older. I know some mid-majors have lost guys, but the good mid-majors have either kept guys or added guys, and it makes mid-majors, I think, really good too. I think it's just the quality of play across the board's a little bit better than I think what it's been in years past. That's my perception, but I don't watch every college basketball game, but that's my perception. It's a little bit better.
Chris, in years past, you've talked about load management and just trying to, as the tournament time approaches, just trying to keep guys healthy, especially with limited practice time. At what point in a typical season would you start to look at load management in practice?
Well, it's a good question. Now, I've never used the term load management. I know that's kind of become a pretty widely used terms, really, in with the number of NBA games. I do think what you're always looking at is collectively kind of the wear and tear on your guys, which is probably just another way of saying. I don't think right now it's too early in the season for us to say, hey, we're going to pull back on guys' minutes. We're not going to practice hard. I mean, we're just in early February. We have got to get better. The guys individually, collectively, we have to get better. So we're a long ways away from tournament time. I mean, it is, we have so many games left. So the reality is I think what we felt last year with the 4 games in 4 days was real in the Big Ten tournament. I don't know how to necessarily manage that as a coach. I don't know how to control, a kid getting a concussion in the midst of a game. So, but I do think we're always mindful as we get into late February and early March, collectively, what are our guys' minutes? And then is there injury things where, that could come into play?
And with the sort of COVID layoffs that you've had, will that sort of factor into your decision on determining that?
Not really, because I think, no, not really. It changed here in the short term. We felt like we had to, do a little more conditioning in January than what we have had to do in the past because we were off for so long. And a little bit more here in this last 9-day layoff, but not really. I mean, we've, listen, I feel good about, I just think in this league it's all about continuing to get better, and I think in year 3 when we finished 9 of 11. I felt really good about how we were playing going into the Big Ten tournament. Year 2, we struggled, but we really performed well in the NCAA tournament. Year 1, I felt like, our guys were pretty fresh. So I think, you're always evaluating that, but we're so far away from that. We've got so much work ahead of us that right now it's about getting better.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, guys. Take care of that.